Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien, and I'm gonna do what I'm gonna call a little talk about a few comics from the fringes. Now, I'm perfectly aware that some of the comics I think of from the fringes, for some people, might be the center of their interest in comics. The comics that really where the authors of those comics are really striving unique personal visions, unique personal statements, and artistically. Oh, look, my camera's moving around with me. Artistically, individualistic creations. To me, they're on the fringes because most of my comic book activity is done at the comic book store, and it's what I normally find in the comic book store is, to me, the mainstream of comics. Might not be to other people. So this kind of stuff is usually I find out from obscure parts of the internet, such as Ryan Carey and his reviews that he does on Patreon, some of which are free. I'll link to him down below. Also from people like Terrence Comickkrakk and the person who was loading the Canon and is now Comic Manifesto, Ray Carcase, other people like that. Although some people, whoa, the camera's going crazy now. Some people I discover on my own because I saw their art on Twitter or something. But anyway, the four comics I want to discuss a little bit from the fringes include Julie Doucet's book Time Zone J, which I don't know if the book specifically or just her whole career when this book came out won her the Angoulême Award in France, which might be the biggest comics award in the world. I'm sure that's arguable. And then I thought I'd talk about Vague Tales by Eric Haven and Cancore by Matthew Allison. And finally, I Killed Adolf Hitler by Jason. So these are all these creators are relatively new to me. It's actually been a few months since I've been meaning to make this video because somehow these are harder for me to talk about in my regular mode. Okay, let's flip this camera. Please, camera, work. Let's see. Yep, there we go. Showing more of my desk than I really wanted. We're going to start out with Time Zone J by Julie Doucet. Let's zoom in on this sucker a bit. So this is her first comic book. I think it came out last year. Did it come out in 2020? Her first comic book or comic book-like thing. No copyrights here. Since sometime in the 90s, I believe. And she was a big star of the, here we go, copyright 2022. This is from Drawn and Quarterly. I got it out of the library. And there was a long wait to get it out of the library. It was fairly popular. But as far as I can tell, all her other books are out of print. I've gotten other books of hers out of the library. Some that I really liked, some that just left me a little, okay. But so for some people, she's kind of a major influence in the, I guess, indie comics, super indie alternate comics scene. And so she's spent years, I think, as a gallery artist after giving up comics, and now has come back with this book called Time Zone J. And it is unique in many ways. And the first thing it tells you this book was drawn from bottom to top. Please read accordingly. Those, I think, are loose instructions, because if you literally read it from bottom to top, it only works some of the time. But so that's slightly radical, rather than left to right or right to left. But all the pages are like this, and you start to realize this is like an endless scroll, endless sideways scroll The whole entire book is, in a sense, one entire never-ending till the last page drawing. So every single edge of every single page is actually not the edge. It continues on. So that makes it really cool. If I owned it, it would be really tempting to try to take it apart and have it as an actual scroll, although I think it's, at least this paperback version, it wouldn't hold up. I don't know if it still has what you'd call, I forget what they call them in publishing, little sections where they print them out in like groups of, I think, 24 pages or something like that, or maybe it's 16, something like that. Anyway, and as you can see, it's endless drawings of mostly faces with occasional other things like that. And the reoccurring face is Julie Doucet's own face. Whoa, and there's Julie Doucet showing us more than perhaps YouTube will like. But in fact, I've heard of some channels that have got canceled because of showing underground comics and the like. So hopefully that won't happen here. But the effect, ultimately, what this, as far as I can understand, is like sitting down with a woman at, say, a cafe or possibly over drinks or something, and having you tell her the story of a weird, perhaps unhealthy relationship that she had years and years ago. In this case, I think she had a long-distance relationship with a comic book artist in France, and it seems like the more crazy they both were, the more they kind of turned each other on, but ultimately, of course, it was doomed. And I think the bird represents the man in the story. I'm not 100% sure. So a lot of it almost reads like eventually, after a while, I said it's like sitting down with an old friend or something and having them tell you an old story. Eventually, it's like having one of those people who there's something a little wrong with them. They can't stop talking. They can't let go of every detail, and they have to just keep going and going. So at first, you kind of are interested where this relationship is going, and after a while, you feel like you're being beaten over the head by her story. Now, whether Julie Doucet is aware of that, probably she is. But either way, it makes it an interesting piece of sort of crazy, or feels like crazy outsider art. Far more radical than any of her other comics that I've read, which tend to be, the other comics that I've read of hers tend to be lots of short little autobiographical snippets. And the book of hers that I love the most was her book of comics about her dreams. And her famous one-woman comic is called Dirty Plot, I believe. And I have some issues of that I need to delve into, actually. But so it's a fascinating experiment. It kind of drove me crazy after a while. I kind of would love to see someone else play with this endless scroll effect in a kind of personal way. And because every person who did it, every artist who did it would take a different approach while using this format. I presume she came up with this type of format herself. I don't know if another artist has done it before. You can see how the dialogue and her face take over even more as we go along. So I can't imagine rereading this. I'm enjoying flipping through it again, but yeah, and I don't know if we're supposed to have sympathy for her getting into this crazy relationship, but to me it seems like she wanted a crazy relationship and she got it, There was no hope of a normal relationship with this person, and perhaps with her, I don't know. So, yeah, it's an interesting novelty. Do I need to go out and buy my own copy? I'm not sure. I think I'd be more interested in some other creator doing their own copy, their own take on this same concept. And yeah, so there's that. I probably have gone on about that too long. The interesting thing about this is that for some people, this is the best comic of 2022. I think it's an interesting comic, and I think it's interesting that to them, it's the best comic of 2022. And then we've got Vague Tales by Eric Haven. I think I was first turned on to Eric Haven by Earl Grey. Look up his YouTube channel. You have to look up Earl Grey comics, I think, otherwise you'll get some other videos about the T. Earl Grey. And that's a fantastic channel for finding about European comics, things more on the fringe, things more artistic, and some mainstream stuff too. And you get a German European perspective. Anyway, I also may have simultaneously learned about Eric Haven from Ryan Carey, who I mentioned before, with his great blog that I used to follow, and now his great Patreon. I don't know what you call a Patreon vlog, but his vlog is blog. His blog is far more than others. Anyway, Vague Tales, like other Eric Haven books, plays with some pop culture elements, but in a weird, surreal, personal kind of point of view. And this Vague Tales purports to be a series of short pieces, and it works that way. Short, kind of weird, kooky pieces, but they also all kind of link up into a larger vision throughout the book, with characters who reoccur and seem linked to each other in various ways. There's a false feeling of a narrative, but it really is more like a free associated dream-like place. I find it very appealing, probably because I share with him a lot of similar feelings about pop culture and the way it emotionally affects me, or lives in my brain, although it probably doesn't live in my brain exactly the same way it lives in the brain of Eric Haven. But yeah, here's the circularity there. So, I guess it's ironic that he names his own book Vague Tales. In a sense, just because of the way he draws, they're very specific and not vague at all. But they're not, like I say, they aren't what you would traditionally call tales. Anyway, I'm a huge fan of Eric Haven, and I'm trying to collect everything I can by him. I'll probably show more of his work in the future. Yeah, really cool book. I guess I've just showed you the entire book. This one's published by Fantagraphics, and list price $16.99. Hopefully it's still in print. I can't remember when it first came out. Maybe there's a finding copyright pages. It's 2017, so it may or may not still be in print. I hope it is. Okay, and then we come to Cancore by Matthew Allison. And I'm sure that Earl Grey and others have talked about Cancore, but I discovered Matthew Allison from, let me adjust my zoom here. I discovered Matthew Allison on Twitter via following Matt Lesniewski. And then I started following Matt Allison because his drawings that he showed on Twitter were amazing. And when he did a Kickstarter or some other crowdfunding to fund a hardcover book of his otherwise out-of-print series about a hero named Cancore, at least I think that's the name of the hero, I jumped on it, and it was one of the crowdfunding situations that I'm really happy with. Actually, it's an extremely nice hardback book, so it may still be on sale via various outlets. I'm guessing through Domino Books perhaps and others. So what I can make of Cancore is I'm looking. First of all, Matthew Allison is an excellent artist in in a style that at least is very close to the best of traditional superhero comic styles, but not quite like any one other superhero artist. But he's this is full of superhero imagery used again in kind of a dreamlike, free form, free floating way. Sometimes you'll start reading this and think we're getting to some kind of story or some further narrative, but it usually undercuts that narrative, as far as I can tell, as we go along. But the images are amazing. It almost feels like, I don't know, Bernie Wrightston meets Jack Kirby, but inside the subconscious of someone who is very willing to expose all their neuroses. And I guess that's where it feels different from vague tales, where I can really sense sort of neuroses, not stated explicitly, but just filling these pages. And the insecurity and human weakness and everything is all there in these incredible pulp images. Kind of bringing out elements that I think are part of some superhero stories anyway, but sort of exploring them in a new way, a less narrative way. There are some sort of narrative parts, which I guess this is some kind of weird cartoon of Matthew Allison, I believe, showing his bad experiences and anger, or maybe it's not really him. But anyway, that feeling, that somewhat reality story, although the lack of noses and eyes and stuff, melds into the Cancore, and it's unexplained. Got these incredible Batman images here. I guess I could just page through this endlessly. I also love the color choices, and it's just a visually luscious book. But of course, if you're looking for a story, I can guarantee you'll be disappointed. But you can definitely suss out a feeling, and you get the thrill of taking these basic visual settings that he's made up, and then playing with them and varying them, and finding new ways of distorting and exploring them as a kind of crazy but super cool, psychotic, cosmic world. I think as it went on, it becomes even more frustrating, more of a hint of a plot, and then a denial of that plot. I have to confess I haven't read this in a few months, but now just thumbing through it, I want to reread it all. But it's not so much a read as a artistic journey. So yeah, I hope that you can find this hardback on the interwebs somewhere. But Cancore, pretty amazing. And also, actually, with the along with the book in the Kickstarter, I signed up for the sketchbook. So this must be sketches he's sold or done at cons, and so you get to see Matthew Allison apply his crazy style to more normal superheroes. I love this. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, sitting on an amplifier here. It's just a crazy vision. I would love to see him do something a little closer to narrative fiction, or quite a bit closer to narrative fiction, but still in his own crazy world. But that may or may not interest him. But these con sketches are amazing in themselves, and these are the kinds of things I guess I was probably seeing on Twitter that made me die to feel like I had to get more Matthew Allison. He's definitely got a lot of patience for a lot of drawing. it strikes me that in Cancore, a lot of times there's large areas of the panel that are empty, but here he's sort of, it's almost a different side of Matthew Allison where he likes to fill things up with black. So it's pretty amazing artwork. I don't know what Matthew is currently working on, or if he's working on comics. I mean, I doubt he's made a lot of money from Cancore, but obviously probably makes. I'm sure people are pretty willing to pay him a good penny for those con sketches. So, and last but not least, and most traditional actually, is I Killed Adolf Hitler by Jason, who all of his characters look like these anthropomorphic cats or dogs. I guess cats. Oh, birds too. Various animals, I guess. And this is, you flip through it and you might think it's a normal linear story, and it is, but it isn't, because it involves time travel, and Jason is not going to set up and explain things to us. We have to figure them out as we go along. So we start figuring out this is a world where assassins are sort of more normalized. It's more of a normal job, and our hero's an assassin, and we have to sort of start understanding his perspective and his relationship with his girlfriend. But then eventually he gets the opportunity to go back in time and kill Adolf Hitler, and then come back to the world that never had Adolf Hitler, and re-meet his girlfriend from before in a world without Adolf Hitler. And I won't give away the rest, but it's just extremely satisfying and very cool. So I need to read more Jason. In fact, I've started to read other Jason that I would say is a bit more difficult than this one. So this, to me, is, well, I haven't read everything by Jason, but this is like the best first Jason book to read as far as I can tell. So I originally heard about Jason. Well, I've heard about Jason from various places, but definitely a lot about Jason from For the Love of Comics. And I think that's what sent me to the library, and I got a bunch of Jason books out of the library. And as soon as I finished reading I Killed Adolf Hitler, I ordered my own copy, also from Fantagraphics. And I'm sure this is still in print, because I think Jason has quite a large library with Fantagraphics. So yeah, very cool. I hope this stuff was of interest to some of my compatriots, comic book reading compatriots here on YouTube. Some of you may know more about these authors than I do and have information or comments you want to make. I'd love to hear that. And I'm going to try to do other videos where I focus on things that are comics more from the fringe, again, from my perspective. And so I'll be back soon and talk with you some more about comic books.